In this latest interview, I have the privilege of introducing one of the most accomplished trial lawyers out there. His name is Nick Rowley. For those that don't know Nick, he is an award-winning national trial lawyer with record-setting verdicts and settlements. In fact, he's recovered over $2 billion for injury victims and families across the country. And yes, that's billions with a B. Nick is also the founder of Trial by Human, and he's an author and co-author to some pretty fantastic books for lawyers, like Running with the Bulls, How to Win Top Dollar Settlements, and Voir dire and Opening Statement, or voir dire for the fancy folks. For those interested in checking out the books, I'll provide links in the description down below. I can keep going on about Nick's credentials, but I'm going to sum it up here by saying that this 3-episode series is a must watch. As always, if you find yourself liking the video and the interview, then don't forget to hit the like button down below. Doing so allows the video to rank higher so we can reach more people and ultimately help more people. That's always the goal. Now, without further ado, I hope you enjoy this interview with Nick Rowley. All right, everyone, I have Nick Rowley with me. Nick, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And Nick, my approach with these interviews is I just like to dive in and just start asking questions. Are you okay with that?
You're going to do a direct examination on me? All right.
Basically, or a cross-examination, depends on the tone.
Okay.
So I've been doing a lot of research. I've been reading the books that you're co-authored on. I've been doing the research on the videos that are out there online. But the one thing that immediately stood out to me is in the book, Voir dire and Opening Statement, there's a simple sentence that immediately caught my eye. It says, "Try cases, damn it." Why is it important for lawyers to go to trial?
Well, if you don't, then they're never going to take you seriously.
And who's they?
They, your opponents, the people you're up against. You know, if they know that you're not willing to go to the mat, you're never going to get the best for your client. And if you don't go to the mat, you're not a real trial lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
You're not. You're somebody huffing and puffing and pounding your chest and saying this is what I'm going to do, and you're not. So in essence, you're a liar.
It's a little bit of all bark, no bite.
Yeah. If you're going to say you're going to do something, then do it. If you want to represent people, then you got to get into courtrooms in front of juries. If you want to preserve the jury trial method, then we need to be in courtrooms. And that's settling. If you believe in people and you believe in the value of civil rights and what it is that, cases are worth and what people ought to get, and if you believe they shouldn't be treated cheaply, then you have to go all the way. You have to go the distance. Otherwise, you're a fake. You're a fraud. You're one of these, billboard lawyers who, just run cases in like widgets. People aren't people. They're just a case number and a dollar sign.
And I definitely want to flush out your philosophy here, but let's start a little bit with your origin story. Reading the books that you're co-authored on, you talk about your humble beginnings as a kid. Can you provide some context for those that are watching?
I grew up, born and raised in Iowa, except for a number of years when I was on a border town in Arizona called Nogales. I spent age 7 to age 12 living there most of the time, back and forth between my mom and dad. My mom ended up back in Iowa in a little farming town called Jefferson. And I started working as early as I possibly could and providing for myself as early as I possibly could. I'd say around, 10 years of age. I did, everything you could imagine, field work, construction work, you name it. I'd wash cars. I'd pick up golf balls. There was a golf course at one place where we lived, and do whatever it took to make money and put clothes on my back and, food on the table. I did it.
And what kind of student were you during these years of your life?
I'm an angry student, a poor student, kid that got kicked out of school, expelled every year from fourth grade all the way through high school. When I graduated from some delinquency program and joined the United States Air Force, and then went into the Army after that.
So why law school?
Well, you get to help people. You get to stand up for people. You get to stand up against authority when authority is wrong.
And I'm really fascinated by that. What motivates you to want to stand up for people?
Growing up, I didn't have anyone standing up for me. And I saw others who, didn't have anyone standing up for them. That's why I got kicked out of a lot of schools,
Mm.
usually for fighting. I've just, I've seen it. I've seen it. I've seen the unfairness in this world since I was a kid. I've seen the lack of balance of power between, the government and people. I paid attention. And as a lawyer, we get to be a voice and a power like nothing else. We can make a difference.
Was there a moment where you saw a lawyer and you're like, that's what I want to do? Like, that's how I want to protect people? Was it something to where you were maybe seeing something on TV? Why protect people through law?
It was actually Jerry Spence. I was a kid and he was representing Randy Weber, who was from my hometown in
Mm,
Iowa. And Jerry was representing him. And the whole town was, talking about, crazy, violent Randy Weaver and,
mm-hmm,
the FBI, they ought to shoot him and everybody else in there. This is Ruby Ridge. I don't know if you remember that,
mm-hmm.
maybe before
Okay.
your time.
And was it during law school or was it?
No, 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 no. This is long before that.
Yeah. So I guess the next question being, was it the Jerry Spence experience or was it being in law school that really put in perspective that you wanted to be in the courtroom, that you wanted to become a trial lawyer?
Well, I saw Jerry on TV
Mm-hmm.
representing Randy Weaver, and there was another side to the story.
Mm,
Everybody in town was saying, this guy's getting everything that he deserves. There was a standoff in Ruby Ridge, Idaho. This is back in the 90s.
okay.
And the FBI went onto his land without a warrant. They shot his son. They, shot and killed his wife. I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff that had happened. And the way that the media was portraying it was Randy Weaver is this bad, crazy guy. I mean, we had Waco around that time frame, and the O.J. Simpson chase, if you might remember,
Mm-hmm.
happened after that. And so I saw Jerry Spence representing Randy Weaver and heard another side of the story. And then I wasn't there, personally, but I read all the news stories. My grandmother out at the farm would always, clip out the news clippings, and she'd send me some of his books, and I'd read up. I said, "Wow, this this is what a trial lawyer is. I'd I'd love to do that someday, to stand up for other people."
That's pretty incredible to me because it sounds like at a very young age you were able to acknowledge that there are multiple perspectives instead of being influenced by maybe the adults in your life or the voices that you're hearing around you in your environment.
Yeah, I'd say it a little differently. From when I was young, I knew what was right and I knew what was wrong, and I knew that standing up for what's right is oftentimes a very tough thing to do and an unpopular thing to do. Sometimes you get beat up over it, right? And so you need people to stand up for what's right, who have the courage and who are willing to get beat up and get knocked down and get back up again and keep going.
And is it your childhood background that provided that resilience that you apparently have?
I guess,
Yeah.
childhood and growing up,
Yeah.
even after my childhood, being in the military, there's a lot that goes into it. Some maybe, some of this I was born with.
Yeah. I just know the plaintiff's life isn't always the easiest life, and you get beat down a lot, and there are times where it's a difficult path, and you kind of have to shrug it off and keep moving along. So I always admire the ones who are able to handle that in stride.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
Yeah,
Have you read The Man in the Arena?
I have not. No.
You should look that up. Just Google it and read it.
Okay, I recently finished.
Theodore Roosevelt.
Okay, okay. I recently finished Rick Friedman's book on becoming a trial lawyer, and the philosophies that Rick has is it was a I I told him I struggled to finish the book because I'd go one chapter in and then pace around my house for the next hour,
Yeah.
just like self-analyzing.
This isn't a book. This is a speech.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, that's on the homework assignment. Everyone watching on Law Venture right now, I'm going to go ahead and provide a link if I can find it down in the description for you to check out. So let's maybe move a little bit further in this timeline. Can you walk us through how law school was? I mean, if you went from not being a great student during your early childhood days, how were you in law school?
Law school was tough.
Hmm.
I had no idea what it was going to be like going into it. There was nobody I had to, look up to look to ask, what do I need to be prepared for in my first day?
Hmm.
So I showed up completely unprepared. I was still serving in the military at the time. Did
Okay.
that for a couple of years in law school. And yeah, it was a struggle. I barely made it my first year. I mean, by like a point, barely made it. I was doing, I was working hard. I was, still, serving. I was also doing a lot of mixed martial arts and, cage fighting at the time. I was law school was my priority, but I didn't know how to make it my priority because I had so much going on, and I'd study and I'd put in the hours, hardly slept, but it just didn't resonate with me the way that it did, for others. And then I'd say after the first semester, it started to click a little bit, and the second year, it clicked. I found my way of learning how to study the law,
This
and
is
it
resonating with me. My first year was a struggle because it was like another language to me. It was very foreign. I didn't have any immediate relatives that were lawyers that I could. It didn't seem like I was speaking, basically the language everyone else seemed to be understanding. So the first year, grades weren't great. The second year, when I started mock trial, maybe it was late first years when I started mock trial. It was the actual practical effect of putting what I've been learning into effect and starting to use it and see how it all comes together is when things started really clicking. And then I realized, okay, no, this is what I'm passionate about, and started honing in on, all right, let's get these basics out of the way so I can start focusing on what I'm more passionate about and gravitating towards.
yeah, yeah, it matches up.
Yeah, okay. I'm sure other people watching are probably going through something similar. Now, let's maybe take a one step further in your journey. I was astonished when I was reading one of your books where it talks about either you were interning or getting paid and as a legal intern who was still getting trial experience. These days, at least in Texas, it's a temporary bar card. To where
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was prosecuting cases with a temporary bar card just to get trial experience. Sounds like y'all called it something else. I can't remember off the top of my head what it was
Yeah,
called.
you're able to get certified as a law student under
Yeah.
it was California Rule 983.2 at the time,
Okay.
back in
Okay.
the 90s.
And and it is typically, at least these days, to where that last internship, that last job in law school, if that one doesn't pan out to ultimately resulting in an actual paying job, you're in a very tough situation. But as I was reading about your background, you seem to have pivoted at that point and didn't work at that job. So can you, for those who haven't read the book, can you explain what all was going on during that time?
I'm a little lost.
Yeah, so it sounded like you wanted to work for a certain firm, a defense firm that wanted
Oh yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So I was certified as a law student. I tried my first cases
Mm-hmm.
as a law student, working under different lawyers.
Okay.
Had a lot of fun, learned a lot, had success. And then there was a defense firm that I had some cases against as a certified law student. They hired me as a law clerk. I still had a number of I still had a number of cases I was working on as a law clerk, certified
Uh
law student with different lawyers in different law firms. I had a whole gig going.
huh.
I was building my business,
Uh huh.
but I thought I'm going to, go work for these guys and I'm going to, learn the other side. And since I was a military medic,
Mm-hmm.
medicine came to me, very naturally. I was able to read medical records and cross-examine doctors and understand what a case was about and, and beat my opponent. So I I was going to take a job. They paid me to study for the bar exam, and um, I studied. I studied hard. I studied harder than anybody I knew. And
Mm-hmm.
that's if you're working harder than the guy to your left, and the gal to your right and the person in front of you, the person behind you, you're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Just look at how hard they're working. Work harder.
Uh-huh.
That's what I did, when it came to studying for the bar and just about everything else in life. So I took the bar, and the last part of the bar exam was a performance test. It was a 3-day exam, and the performance test involved writing a opposition to a summary judgment motion on a case involving assumption of the risk.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they have all the case names changed and everything. Well, I knew those cases like the back of my hand because I had just written an appeal on the issue.
Great.
So I get the performance test, and I look at it. I go, you got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me.
Mm-hmm.
So I sat back and I smiled and I said, okay, I'm going to pass this exam because I know I'm going to smoke this part of it.
Uh-huh.
So I'm back after I took the bar, and one of the named partners at this big old law firm, came in, and we were in the break room, and he goes, hey, how do you feel about the bar exam? And, I was young and brash and cocky, I suppose, but also confident. I just said,
Uh-huh.
my only question is who's second runner up? That's pretty cocky. I said, well, I call it confident. And I studied hard. I know I passed. He goes, oh, okay, well, we're excited to have you here. And I was still clerking, waiting for my bar results. And I said, well, I'm excited to try cases for you guys. He goes, well, it took me 10 years to start trying cases. I worked out of, so-and-so's, broom closet, had a whole story. I said, well, I'm not waiting 10 years to try cases. Long and the short of it is, didn't work out there. So I worked with another firm, and I did both, med mal defense for a little more than a year, but they allowed me to take my own load of plaintiff's cases.
I'm so fascinated by that because it almost feels like, at least in this day and age, I remember that point where I graduated, I had the results, and a job that was lined up fell through. And I just remember just panicking, like, oh, I'm not going to have a job. I have student loans. And so it seems like what you did was you bet on yourself, basically. You said, this is what I want.
Ultimatum.
Yeah.
They said, listen, you've got to agree to work here. We're going to pay you the higher salary you want.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a wife, you've got kids, but here's what you got to agree to. You're not going to try cases. You're going to learn how to do discovery and basically carry briefcases, and you're not going to complain about it. And I wasn't going to be dishonest with them. I said, no, I'm not okay with that. Mm-hmm. So I went home without a job. But I already had a reputation, so I just picked up the phone and, got another one.
That's great.
And I had my own load of cases I was still working on, with these other law firms, just waiting to get my license, swear in, so that I could, take those cases over. I had worked out, negotiated bonuses on cases in the meantime, so I could keep working on them, without being paid. It was, it was a delicate situation that I was able to weave through just fine, and pay all my bills and make enough money to support my family and open up my own law firm.
That's great, and that's it's something that I really admire as well, because you saw exactly what you wanted your future to be, and you didn't compromise on that. And I think that's something that a lot of people watching this should probably take to heart, which is, if you have a certain goal, even if you're having to accept a job that's, going to pay less, or it's going to be a tougher road, don't compromise on the person you're trying to become.
Right. If compromising is never an option. Mm-hmm. You might do something temporarily to get by, mm-hmm. but you got to keep your eye on your goal. Keep your focus on where you're planning to be, and how am I going to get there? I might have to stop right here for a moment, and tie my shoes and, mm-hmm. And load up my backpack, but mm-hmm. This is where I'm going. Nobody's going to stop me.
So you mentioned about starting your own firm. There's a point in one of the books where you mentioned, I have his name written down here, William Rittner, aka Wild Bill, and he told you as a partner, telling you, I'm assuming an associate at this time, that it's time for you to go out and start your own law firm. That blew my mind, because typically I'm picturing partners and employers wanting to keep their best, under their own roof. What did that mean to you, hearing something like that?
Well, I was nervous, but I knew he cared about me, and yeah. I looked up to him. So I listened, and I heard him out, and he said, he goes, you've always been a plaintiff's lawyer. That's what you were born to do. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be able to do that, here. It's just, you're not going to be able to grow and become one of these, really successful lawyers that represents people. We
Hmm.
are an insurance defense firm. We represent the government. You've taken a bunch of cases that are plaintiff cases, and we've supported that. But it's getting to the point where you're bringing in, more cases and more money on the plaintiff side than you are the defense. And this law firm was kind of on its way to, it was splitting up.
Okay.
So Patterson, Rittner, Lockwood were the originals, and
Hmm.
Clyde Lockwood and Bill Rittner, they were getting up there in age, so they wanted to retire. And the other partners, who had, with all the different offices throughout the state of California, they had different ideas about what they wanted to do with the firm, and some didn't get along, and some did. So he goes, "Now's the time.
Hmm.
Now's the time." And actually, Bill just passed away a couple weeks ago.
Oh, I'm
His
sorry to hear
son,
that.
yeah, he lived a long life.
Yeah.
His son Rod, is one of my partners out
Okay.
in the Midwest.
Can you talk about your views on networking? Because as I'm hearing everything you're saying, it sounds like you were able to, I don't even say hedge your bets. You were able to really bulletproof yourself and your options by having these cases and coming in and these other avenues. Is that from networking and meeting with people?
A lot of that. And then the other thing that, while Bill did, is he was just such a great man. Um, gave me my start. Is he let me take all the plaintiff's cases and waived any interest in attorney's fees on those cases. So I had a boost, that I can't. The only person I know who has done that to other lawyers is me. Where lawyers have started out with me, and I say, it's time for you to go out on your own. Hey, here you've worked on these cases. Need my help? Let me know. But take them. I don't need any attorney's fees. Go out and soar.
That's incredible. Because if I'm going to be totally honest, as a solo lawyer, I have reached pain points where the amount of cases that I'm dealing with, I'm like, I think I need to bring somebody in, another lawyer. But then I
Mhm.
ask myself, do I want to hire another me and then have to deal with potential turnover? Or do I want to hire, somebody who is wanting to be more of an employee and wanting safety? And selfishly, I think it's maybe the latter, but at the same time, I'm like still trying to grapple with that. What are your thoughts there?
Well, focus on quality, not quantity. In
Mm-hmm.
terms of more cases, as you spread yourself thin, then you start relying on other people.
Mm-hmm.
And ask yourself the question: are you giving those human beings that trusted you, with their cases before you started to expand and get spread thin? Are you giving them what they deserve?
Yeah. And that's
And
that's the threshold of the pain point of realizing, okay, my attention's getting more run thin than I feel comfortable with, versus like hitting a certain number, and feeling like
yeah,
I'm overworked there. So maybe circling back to the trial journey here, did you have any specific growing pains while in the courtroom?
I did.
Okay.
I did. When a judge would rule against me, and I believe that I was right and he or she was wrong, I took it personal.
Hmm.
I took it personal, and I locked horns with judges and formed, I guess, earned a reputation as somebody
Hmm.
who would get into it with judges. And that was in the, first, however, uh, maybe 5 years.
Hmm.
Maybe even up to, I still carried that reputation for a while. It took a
Hmm.
while to shake it, but and sometimes I was in the right,
Yeah.
but I would go, you know headstrong right into it
Yeah.
and call judges out and say, you're biased, you're unfair, and here's what you're doing, and it's unethical. And I mean, I would get into it with them.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that. Well, these judges are friends with other judges, and it can come
Uh-huh.
back to bite you. Fortunately, it didn't come back to bite me very much, but that was a growing pain that I went through. And now I can say with confidence and the experience that backs it up and the results that back it up, that I go into courtrooms with very, very difficult judges, and I'm able to try the case and do my job and not get in trouble, and sometimes turn them around. But it took a while to get there.
So here's a confession. Nick, preparing for this interview with you has been
Mhm.
the hardest one for me compared to the other interviews that I've done. And I want to explain why. I try to do as much homework as I can on to prepare for the interview, and I try and avoid any type of redundancy of content that's already out there, whether it's in a book or if it's online, because I don't want there to be too much overlap. I want to give as much like new content as possible. So I originally wasn't wanting to talk about your origin story as much because that's in part of it's in the book, part of it's online elsewhere. But there's something I kept coming back to over and over again, and you're, what you just said is touching on that a little bit. And when I read about you, learn about you, and the passion and the fire and the drive that you have, I couldn't help but assume that the kind of lawyer you would be in the courtroom would be the type that would bring the fire and brimstone. But then when I actually went and started watching the clips that are circulating online of you presenting to a jury, you have this incredible soft touch in your presentation, that's also simultaneously very, very powerful. And it wasn't something I was expecting. Can you talk about your style in the courtroom and how that's either developed over the years or how that naturally comes to you?
Hmm. I try to keep my finger on the pulse of everything that's going on. And people aren't going to hear you if you're yelling at them. But people also, they're not going to hear you if you're really, really soft. So, talking to a jury, it's like singing a song. You've got to, there are different pitches. There's different cadence to your speech that you need to learn if you're going to be a trial lawyer. Talking really, really, really fast, people are going to miss half of what you're saying. You've got to let your words sink in. You've got to allow people to feel your words and what it is that you are saying, what you're communicating, what you are feeling. And the hardest thing to do is to learn how to be silent. If you want other people to feel your words, then you need to be able to feel them yourself. You need to be able to reflect on that. Whoa, there it is. Yeah. Okay. Move on to the next point. Or maybe that brings you to something else. I never have a script when I get up in front of a jury. I might, write everything out and, I say something that's almost completely different. I get up and I try to be in the moment. And I care about those people. I care about, the people in the courtroom, especially about those jurors, who hopefully are going to care about the person I care about, who I'm there to represent. I get in touch with that. Sometimes I don't do as good of a job at it as I'd like, and you get grenades and stuff thrown at you while you're trying to do your best. But yeah, I guess that's the best way I can explain it.
That's really, really interesting, and I appreciate you sharing that. When you're pausing in order to have the silence so people can feel, and as you're reflecting during those moments, how have you come to trust your feelings in that situation, and making judgment calls to, go one way with an argument versus another, knowing that your feelings are the right ways to be acting?
You check in with the other people in the courtroom, especially those jurors, and what is their feeling? What's going on with them? What is it that they need from you? So focus on trusting them and trusting others, and then maybe you'll trust yourself and get past the distrust, right, that we have of ourselves. Try to shake that. And you're standing there, you got a job to do, you're born to do it. There's a reason why you're there. The universe is very wise. Everything's aligned to have you right there in that moment on that day. As long as you do your very best, you win. The result, is what the result's going to be. But if you do your best, whatever the outcome is. I mean, I might lose a case, but if I've done my best, then I've won. And if I haven't done my best, then I've lost, even if the result is that, I get a verdict and I win, but I haven't done my best. No, that's not a win. Not for the person who trusted me, who trusted you.
Are the moments when you realize you didn't do your best, are those the learning moments that help improve yourself?
Yes, very much so. Very much so. Hold on a second. My wife is now printing paper. She's working in the other office. The printer's right here.
Hopefully it's another book. I'm ready to read another one. What's your advice? Do you got some ideas for another book? We're going to tease that. You heard it here first, Law Venture. Just be on the lookout. Speaking of which, before actually transitioning a little bit, whenever there are future books out there, future content, or people who just want to see what Nick Rowley's up to, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you? Personally, I follow you on Instagram, so I'll provide a link to your Instagram down below in the description. Any other way?
Well, my Instagram handle is pretty simple. I'm glad I got it.
Yeah, I don't know how you got it. I'm impressed you got it.
So, well, not many people identify themselves, before they saw that as a jury trial lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
I asked myself, what am I? That is what I am. That's as a professional, not a judge lawyer, an arbitration lawyer. I've done those, but
yeah,
I'm a jury trial lawyer. So that's how you can find me. And if you, I have a personal website, and then I have tl4j.com. You can find me there.
Okay. Great. And I'll provide links to all that down below, guys. Check it out. So what you just said is interesting. A question just popped up in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Do you totally internalize the jury trial lawyer as your identity? Or are you able to turn it off and on as needed as you navigate through life?
Wow, that's one of the most interesting questions I think I've had thrown at me. Let me think about that. But the catastrophically injured human is there alone. What's that human being's experience worth? The economic damages are not something that come into consideration when calculating the non-economics. Otherwise, the law would tell you to do it that way. So someone back there says, well, let's agree on this number and then just double it, triple it, quadruple it. That's not the way to do it.